Hey, how's it going? So, about to go through every single problem on the study guide. I'm just going to go pretty quickly. You can slow down the video and email me questions about it if you need help. But factoring, right? I'm going to make the test basically the same as this. So, if you can do these problems, you should be able to get a hondo on the test. So, looking at the basics, we're looking for is it in the right order? Is there a greatest common factor that we pull out? Is there four terms? We're going to try grouping. Three terms. We're going to try do that product sum chart. So let's get started. So looking at number one, these are both divisible by 4a. So if I were to take out 4a, what would be left if I divide them both by 4a? This is just 1 plus 3, which is really the same thing. It's just 4a times 4, right? I know that's really just 16a, but I want you to get the idea of pulling out a greatest common factor. On this one, looking for a GCF, first thing I should do is put it in the right order. So we've got 6ax cubed minus 24ax squared plus 18ax. Right, I want to organize them by the highest power of x. So I've got the cube, then the squared, then the single x. And I'm going to divide these all by a greatest common factor. It looks like they're all divisible by 6 and by a and by x. So I'm going to divide them all by 6ax. And we're going to see what we got left over after we divide that all by 6ax. So first term is going to be x squared minus 4x plus 3. Then we're going to try to find a way to multiply to get 3, but add to be negative 4. So I want a product of 3 and a sum of negative 4. That's going to be negative 1 times negative 3. So this final form will be 6ax and x minus 1, x minus 3. Final answer. Grouping. So number 3 is basically an introduction to grouping. If we've got the same thing being multiplied to two different terms, we can basically pull out those terms and be left with two binomials. So since a is being multiplied by x plus 3 and b is being multiplied by x plus 3, we can rewrite as a plus b times x plus 3. Final answer. Same thing on number 4. They're both being multiplied by x minus 1. I want to make sure that you just see that this negative is important right here. So since they're both being multiplied by x minus 1, I can just write the first term. So we've got 2x and negative 3. Those are both being multiplied by x minus 1. Final answer right here. Okay. Number 5, slightly different. We've got 4 terms. If you see 4 terms, you should be thinking about grouping them. So I'm going to group some, group the others. These are going to group together. These are going to group together. I'm going to look for a greatest common factor. So greatest common factor of these guys is 5s squared. Greatest common factor here. Looks like there's nothing. That's just going to be a positive 1 that I'm going to pull out. So my final answer is going to be the two GCFs. So what I pulled out of each one, and then what's left over should be matching this. Let me not skip that step. So if we rewrite this as 5s squared, after we divide out this 5f squared, we're left with just s plus 2. And then over here, if I pull out that plus 1, we're left with also s plus 2. And now you see it looks like number 4, because they're both being multiplied by s plus 2. So final answer is going to be what's in front. We got 5s squared, and then this plus 1. And they both are being multiplied by s plus 2, so s plus 2. Final answer right here. Number 6, we've got 4 terms again. So I'm going to group the first 2, going to group the second 2, and look for GCF. So right here, we can pull out 2x cubed. Right here, since this is negative, I have to pull out a negative. This term right here is negative. We want the first term positive, so I'm pulling out a negative. These are both divisible by negative 3x. So I would have 2x cubed. That's the GCF I pulled out. And what's left will be, what's that, x plus 4. And then right here, when I pull out the negative 3x, what's left is going to be x plus 4 also. And since they both have the x plus 4, my final answer is going to be these two things in front, 2x cubed minus 3x. And that's going to be multiplied by the same thing that they have left over, x plus 4. So you should always get something that matches. If you're doing this grouping, they should always have this matching x plus 4 or this matching s plus 2. That's how the grouping is going to work. All right, moving on. When we got 3 terms like this, we're looking for, is it in standard form? Is there a GCF? Then I'm looking for the product sum chart. So it is in standard form. There is not a GCF. So I can say what has a product of 6 and a sum of 5. That's going to be 2 times 3, right? Because 2 times 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5. So my final answer is going to be x plus 2 times x plus 3. All right, number 8 is not in the right order, so we're going to have to rewrite. I need highest power, then the next, then the next, so I need to just switch the second and third term. This becomes x squared plus x minus 12. And now I'm doing my product sum chart. So what multiplies to be negative 12 but adds to be positive 1? That's going to be plus 4 and minus 3. So x plus 4, x minus 3, and that's it. Right, since there's no number in front right here, we just make the product sum chart after we get in the right form and check for a GCF. Then the product sum chart is going to jump right to the answer because 4 times negative 3 is negative 12, and 4 plus negative 3 is positive 1. This is my final answer. Number 9. So this time it's got some issues, right? It's not in the right order, and there's a GCF, right? These are all divisible by 2. So first thing I'm going to do is put them in the right order. We got 2x squared minus 16x plus 30. These are all divisible by 2. So when I take out my 2, I'm left with just x squared minus 8x plus 15. And now I'm looking to do my product sum chart. So what multiplies to be 15 but adds to be negative 8 is going to be negative 3 and negative 5. So don't forget this guy. My final answer is going to have the GCF. And then the two numbers that multiply to be 15 but add to be negative 8 we said was negative 3 and negative 5. Final answer. Don't forget the GCF that we took out from the very beginning. Okay, now we get to the tougher problems, right? So this time there's not a GCF. It is in the right order. So I make my product sum chart. I want to multiply it to be this time is really the first times the last. So I need a product of negative 8, 2 times negative 4. That's where I get that number from. And I need a sum of negative 7. So you got to multiply to get negative 8, but add to be negative 7. That's going to be negative 8 times 1. And I'm going to split this up with those numbers. The reason I'm doing this different than the other ones is because there's a number in front that I cannot divide out, right? And number 9, I was able to divide out a GCF, and then there's no number in front. This time I cannot because 2, 7, and 4 don't have anything in common. So I'm going to use these numbers, split up this negative 7. We got 2x squared minus 8x plus 1x minus 4. And those numbers are coming from my little chart, right? -8 and +1. Using that to split this middle term up. And now I'm looking for a GCF of these. So this one is divisible by 2x. This one looks like nothing, means it's just going to be +1. And so when I divide this out, I will have 2x. And what's left will be x minus 4. And then I pull out a +1, and what's left is x minus 4. And now this looks like the previous problems where we factor by grouping. So since they're both being multiplied by x minus 4, my final answer is the two GCFs, 2x and +1, multiplied by what's left over, which is x minus 4. Final answer. All right, number 11, we got to make sure it's in the right order. It is. We need to look for a GCF. There is one, right? They're both, all three being multiplied by 2. They have a factor of 2. So when I pull out a 2, I'm left with 2 parentheses 15x squared plus x minus 2. And now I'm looking to make a product sum chart for this. So my product is going to be the first one times the last one. So 15 times -2 is -30. And my sum is the middle term, which is 1. So I need to multiply to get -30 and add to be 1. What's that going to be? 5 and 6, right? So this is going to be -5 times 6. And that's what I'm going to use to split this middle term up. So this now becomes 15x squared minus 5x squared minus 5x plus 6x, because we're using the chart to find this, minus 2. And now this is one of my grouping problems. I got 4 terms. So I'm looking for a GCF. These are both divisible by x. These are both divisible by +2. And so my final answer will be the two GCFs, which is 5x plus 2, times what's left over, and it's going to match on both of them. So if I divide this by 5x, I'm left with 3x minus 1. And I better get the same thing over here. This divided by 2 and this divided by 2 is also going to be 3x minus 1. That's how we know we got it right. They should both have the same thing left over. All right, last one on this side. This one is all messed up, right? It's not in the right order. There's a big GCF, and then we're going to have to do the product sum chart. So first thing I'm going to do is write it in the right order. I want my x cubed, then my x squared, and then my single x. I'm going to change colors real quick. We don't get mixed up. These are all divisible now by what? 3? Yeah, 3x. So what's left is, after I pull out a 3x, what's left is, help me out, 8x squared plus, what's that? 42 divided by 3 is 16. No, what's that? 42 divided by 3. Raven, what's 42 divided by 3? 14. Dang, my wife is so smart. 14. X, and then 45 divided by 3 is 15. So now my product is 8 times -15. Your boy's busting out a calculator. No, y'all got calculators at home. So 8 times 15. We need a product of -120. And a sum of my middle term, which is 14. So I need to multiply to get -120, but add to be 14. So what do we got? 20 and 6, right? So it's going to be negative 6 times 20. And that's what I'm going to use to split these up. Let me hide this thing. So this becomes now 8x squared minus 6x plus 20x minus 15. And I can do my grouping. So group the first two, group the second two. Look for a GCF. Right here we got 2x. Over here we've got 5, positive 5. So my final answer will be my GCF. Don't forget this. That's got to go in front. So my GCF, which is 3x. And then my two GCFs I pulled from my groups, 2x plus 5. Pen is kind of jacked up. And what's left over, better match. So if I divide this first group by 2x, it becomes 4x. And this by 2x is negative 3. I better get the same thing on the next one. So 20x divided by 5, that's 4x, and negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. Bada bing, bada boom, they match, so we got it right. Okay, just a couple left. These solve problems. So what we're going to do is set each one of these equal to 0. So I want to set x plus 4 equal to 0 and x minus 1 equal to 0. Right? Because if this was 0, 0 times anything would make this true. And if this one was 0, 0 times anything would also make this true. So I want to know if this is 0, I'm good. If this is 0, I'm good. And what x values would make that true? So I just solve for x. If x was negative 4, we would be good. Also, if x was positive 1, we would also be good. So there's two solutions. This is actually going to touch the x-axis at these two spots, x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 1. Same thing on the next one, except we'll just set x equal to 0, right? Because if this was 0, it would all be 0. And set this equal to 0. Because if that was 0, it would also make it true. Subtract 5, divide by 2. So my two answers are x equals 0. That would work. And then when I subtract 5, divide by 2, that will be my other one. I think my computer is dying or something. Acting pretty slow. All right, graphs. We're doing the same thing. We know that x is going to be 3 and x equals negative 1. Those are going to be solutions to this graph. And all you got to do is make sure it touches the graph at those two spots. So at x equals negative 1 and x equals 1, 2, 3. It's going to be a U shape that's right side up because it's positive. Well, right side up because it's positive. And it's going to touch at these two spots. So it's going to be matching on the test. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we know it touches at negative 1, 0, and it also touches at 3, 0. So just do the best you can. Draw a graph that looks like this. Number 16 is slightly different because there's a negative in front. So this is going to make my u be upside down. And I'm going to do the same thing. I set these two factors equal to 0. So if this was 0, I'm good. Also, if x is negative 5, I'm good. So I go to my graph. If x is 0, that's a solution. And then at 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5, that will also be a solution. So I'm saying these equal to 0. That's going to be where it touches the x-axis at. And this guy makes it be upside down. So just draw an upside down u that touches these x-intercepts. Right? It touches at negative 5, 0. And it touches at 0, 0. All right, number 17. These were definitely the most missed problems on the Khan Academy, but I think a little explanation can go a long way. You got a jump shot, so it's going up, it's going to go to the top and go down. If you ever seen someone throw something, it goes up and then it goes down. Um, when I'm shooting the ball, it's going to be, remember, this is time. T is time and H is height. So I want to know what's the height of the ball just before the shot. That's going to be right when time is 0. So if time is 0 right here, I'm just going to plug this in. So for the first part, the height at time 0, why does it look like that? The height at time 0 is going to be, I just plug in 0. So t becomes 0. This is 0 minus 3. So my computer is acting so annoying. And 0 plus 2. And then I just evaluate this. So this is negative 3. Negative 3 times negative is positive 3. 0 plus 2, this is 2. So negative 3, negative 3, which is 3, times 2. The height is going to be 6. 6 feet. 6. And then it says, what is the time when the ball hits the ground? So when the ball hits the ground, that means that the height is 0. So I want to know, when is this equal to 0? Right? That's just going to be when t is 3 or at negative 2, right? Just like we did on the previous two problems, I set these equal to 0. If time was 3, this would all be 0. If time was negative 2, this would be 0. Since negative 2 time does not make any sense, the only one that's going to work is when time is 3. The ball will hit the ground, right? So I'm looking for the zeros, just like I did on problems 15 to 16. That's going to be when the ball hits the ground. All right, last one. So rectangular garden, let's think about it. I got a rectangle. The area, all the stuff on the inside, is 5x squared minus 14x minus 3. Come on, stylus, bro. And then it says that one of the sides is 5x plus 1. So I want to know, what is the other side. I'm just trying to figure out, what am I going to multiply by this to get this? So what we can do is we can just factor this. That'd be the easiest thing. Or you could kind of guess and check and say, what could I multiply this by to get this down here? Well, I know that it needs to equal 5x squared minus 11x minus 3. And that's going to be one side times the other side. So 5x plus 1 times my other side. So if I want to get a 5x squared, I know that my first term is going to need to be just x, right? Because 5x times x, that will give me my first term. And I know that my last term has to be negative 3. Right, because 1 times negative 3, that's going to give me the last one, 5, negative 15. Why did I write 1 right here? This is negative 14. I was about to say, stylus be messing up. And that's it. If I FOIL these out, 5x times x, that's 5x squared. If I do 1 times negative 3, that's negative 3. And when I do my middle terms, 5x times negative 3, negative 15, plus 1 times x gives me my negative 14 just like I want. You could also just go back and factor this if you wanted. But I think this guessing check is pretty good. So that's it. Rewind the video if you need to check these problems. Send me an email, and the test is going to be just like this. So Good luck. And yep, I'll see y'all soon. Bye.